Think I was gonna let this week go by without talking about more pens, did ya? Today I'm gonna wrap up kind of these 3 days of lettering for beginners, sort of a little kickstart into practicing lettering. We're gonna talk about pens. I'm gonna give you 2 disclaimers. The first disclaimer is that these are my opinions and everybody's got them, just like assholes. So if you want to share yours in the comments, feel free to go for it, but don't be a dick. The second disclaimer is that while I'm going to show you a few options for practicing lettering, the different pens to practice lettering with, I will say that the most important pen that you can practice with is one you already have, because then you have it and you'll start and you're not going to use excuses like I need to go buy all the things to actually, get going. The most important thing is to get going. So if you get caught up in shopping for all the pens, and trust me, I fall prey to that all the time. My pen collection is gigantic. Try not to get stuck in that loop and just get started and then buy pens. But at least start first. But these pens, I'm going to talk about a few different options. This is a Rhodia notebook. I did not mention this in my lettering practice journals because I didn't have one. But I picked one up when I was in the city on the recommendation of a lot of you. And I found that it's beautiful. It's a beautiful paper. I don't know what size it is. It's maybe like, the back says 5x5, but it doesn't look like 5x5 to me. I don't know what size this is. I also don't know how much it costs because I never took, it wasn't too expensive because I managed to get 2 Uniball Signos and this for like $13. So it couldn't have been that expensive. But it's still kind of pricey compared to some cheaper options. So I would not recommend everybody go out and get one of these if you don't have the money for it. But what I've heard about these, besides the fact that the paper is super soft and doesn't have a lot of bleed through, is that because of the way this paper is made, it doesn't have those fibers in it the way that other papers do. And so it's not going to jack up your brush tips anytime soon. However, it doesn't mean you need to use it. It's just a cool thing you could use. So and I'm just using this today as like a tester. Anyway, let's go to the pens. So I have 2 different kind of styles of pen here. I have brush pens and I have like regular tipped pens, right? So we'll talk about the regular tipped. I'm sure there's a better word for it than that. I just don't remember what it is. So we'll start with these first. So they're all black black ink. I have allergies, so I'm more nasal than usual. I prefer to practice in black ink, but you don't have to. You can practice in whatever color you want. Ooh, the sun is coming out and my lighting's getting weird. Okay, so what do I have here? These are all felt-tipped type pens. I have different kinds ranging in price ranges, and actually this guy may be discontinued, so I should probably take him out, but I will pour one out for the extra fine Sharpie because I love extra fine Sharpies. But I'm going to take that out now because it just occurred to me they're discontinued, and that's just cruel. They're felt tip type pens. I do not generally practice lettering with rollerball or gel ink pens, mostly because I'm heavy-handed and I like something with a little bit more like firmness to it. You can, but I'm just not going to, with those, just pick your favorite one and use it. I find these ones a lot easier to practice with. So this is my personal favorite, is a Papermate Flare. This is the medium tip. It's bold. They have an ultra fine that I love, but not so much for lettering. And it's a nice bold tip. You can see how girthy the lettering is for the Papermate Flare. And I love using something like this for practicing bubble lettering because I found that the fatter the tip is, the easier it is to camouflage mistakes. When you are, let me put fat here for my fat tip. Yeah. When your hand is shaky, when you're still practicing and you're not great at making confident strokes yet, having a fatter pen kind of camouflages the shakiness. The finer your tip is, the more every little wobble is going to be obvious. And so Papermate Flare works really, really well for having nice hardy lines to cover up any uncertainty. The other thing that I love about the Papermate Flare is that because I'm so heavy-handed, this nice fat hardy tip can handle my massive heavy downstroke. I like the iron fist, and this pen is hard enough and stiff enough, and God, this sounds so perverted, but it's enough to handle my iron fist. You also can use something like a Statler. This is the black Statler Triplets fine liner. You can get this generally at the store, Target or whatnot. And the tip is a little bit smaller. How do you spell that? I can't freaking spell today. It's a long fucking name. So you can see, and this is my sloppiest writing ever, but you can see how fine this, like much finer this is compared to the flare. But it's still somewhat hardy. And this actually has a similar tip to the ultrafine Sharpies, or not ultrafine Sharpies, ultrafine flares. And this guy works pretty well for practicing, especially if you don't have as heavy as a hand as I do, because you're not going to squish it as bad. But this also, like, I'm going to put less for less fat. This still gives you a nice, like, kind of thick line while not being quite as fat. So this will show some of your wobbliness if you have some, but I find it kind of comfortable to practice with, and it's a little less. This is great. Well, I think the Papermate's great for practicing bubble letters. This guy is awesome for practicing things like when you're adding like serifs to things. I don't know why I'm doing that. Because you have a little bit more control over something that's skinny rather than something that's, I don't even know why I'm doing it like this. You have a little bit more control over something that's skinny rather than something that's kind of fat. So you'll be able to get like a little nicer situation going on. This works a little easier for that in terms of control. You can have a little bit more detail. And then Epic pens for practicing are these Pigma Microns. They are archival ink. They are waterproof, so you can, like, once these dry, you can paint on top of them if you want to. These are artist pens, and they are a little bit more expensive than the other options. But you can get these in multiple, like I have an 05 here, and I have an 03 here, which is slightly, and this can get all the way down to 001 and get even bigger and up into like a bold tip and a brush tip. And the ink is perfect for lettering, especially when you're lettering something you want to like be like a final draft. So these are great for that. Same reasons that these are awesome. These are just the nicer quality of pens. So when once you've practiced with something inexpensive like this, moving to microns is probably a great thing. There's also other ones like Pitt Artist pens and other things. I can link my pen video so you can see all the different ones. But if I was going to be practicing and I wanted to stay on a budget, I would buy a black flare or a Statler. And if I had a little bit more money, I'd buy a couple microns, and that would be where I'd start with this style of pen for practicing, just to have something to start with. When it comes to beginner brush pens, I have 4 pens here. 3 of them are by Tombow, not sponsored by Tombow. The first one is this Pentel sign pen, and I'm actually, like I was saying, the first one is this Pentel sign pen, the one with the flexible nib, and I just did, like literally just did a review on this, but I found that it works great for practice. It's a nice, like, you can get a lot of control with it. It's not going to have, without, like, you can do a lot of different lettering with it in terms of brush lettering. It's a pretty basic one, and they're selling these at Target right now, so this is a good one. This nib is, like, flexible without being super flexible, and it's small enough where you can write small like in your planner and not worry about it. My favorite pen for practicing is a Tombow dual brush marker, and I love this one because the nib is big and firm and yet has a nice differentiation. See how the difference in terms of the size of the nib? But I love this because of how heavy-handed I am. I found that the bigger nib actually helps me feel like I have more room to drop it like it's hot. Whoops. Whatever. Let's see how that bled through. See, look at that. Not much blood bleed through at all. Holy, look how moist this is. And look how little it's bleeding through. That is a sign of this expensive paper being worth it. So, side note. I like using Tombows because of how flexible yet firm the nib is and how big it is. I like them for me being so heavy-handed, but being so big, they're also, you can't practice smaller. You have to kind of go bigger, and sometimes it can be kind of hard to work with. So if you want to try something smaller, there's these 2 pens. These are the Tombow Fudenosuke pens. There's a hard tip and a soft tip. The blue pen is the hard tip, and this one is firmer than the Pentel, but it's nice and small. So I'm just going to write Tombow again. But look how small. Because it's hard, you can get a really, really like nice differentiation between the skinny upstrokes and the fat downstrokes, even with a heavy hand. So this one is the one, actually out of these two, I prefer this one the best for being heavy-handed. But if you are a little lighter than I am, a little lighter-handed, the soft one is really comfortable. The tip is a lot more flexible. That's this guy. It doesn't get much bigger. It's very similar, I think, to the Pentel. I don't like it as much because I'm so heavy-handed. I have to be really careful to not just have giant fat lines all the time. But it is small and really beautiful ink. So of these brush pens, generally you can order them online on Amazon. If you have an art supply store, you can usually get your hands on them. But the easiest one to get a hold of if you have just a Target nearby are these Pentel sign pens. Just make sure you get the ones with the flexible nibs. But they sell them in a pack with many colors for pretty inexpensive at Target right now. So this would be the one I'd recommend for beginners who don't have a lot of access. But if you can get your hands on a big dual brush pen or one of the smaller Fudenosuke pens, they're a great practice pen. And then once you get the hang of brush lettering, then you can move into the world of 8,000 different brush pens and find the ones that really suit your needs. Suggestion I would make though is whenever you get any of these pens, to start by just making basic practice strokes for a little while at first, just to get the hang. You should do this with any brush pen just to get the hang of how it feels, because they all feel different from each other. Okay, so that feels like I just puked a lot of information on you really quickly, but to sum it up, if you're on a budget and you want to start with a brush pen and a regular pen to practice lettering, my suggestion would be go to Target, pick yourself up a black Papermate Flare and some Pentel sign pens. And this will get you going with a regular style pen and a brush pen. And if you want to get a little deeper into it, you can explore into the world of the Tombos and the Microns and the Statlers. Start with what you have. And next time, anytime you go to Target, you have an excuse to go in the pen aisle to pick these up. But that is my suggestion for beginner pens to practice with. What pen is your favorite to practice with? Let me know in the comments, because I always, even though I said at the beginning, I'm trying not to give you a reason to go buy all the things without actually practicing, but I actually practice every day, so I would like to go buy some more pens. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time.